Right, so this rig, what I'm going to be showing you today on the rig strips here on the RigMate Pro, is probably the rig that I use most often during the year. I'd say it's probably the most versatile rig out of any of the rigs that I've got in my commercial range. And basically, it's called the F1 Winter Deck Rig, but that's probably slightly sort of misleading in terms of saying it's just a winter deck rig. This is probably a rig that I would use for fishing for silvers as well, summer and winter. You know, catching silvers in the winter, like I say, F1s and carp. It's just a good all-round rig, fishing on the bottom when you're trying to get good presentation and just when every bite's going to count. So basically, the float that I'm going to use and everything like that is all about making everything really versatile. So, like I say, the float is a 1.5mm Maggie float. Now, this one's a 414, just as an example, but, you know, on the RigMate strips, when you get them, they will have, you know, the information for 4x12, 4x14, 4x16, all the different range what you might use will all be on there. So it's not just for a 414, it's for, you know, all the different sizes that I would use. Now, this float, like I say, it's got a 1.5mm tip, it's got a carbon stem. I just think that's just a good all-round shape and profile of float for fishing for everything. You could even use these floats in the summer if you wanted to for catching carp and F1s. Just a brilliant all-round pattern, and that's what this rig strip's all about. So, like I say, that's the float. Now the line, I've got 015 N gauge. Again, fishing for anything from silvers up to a few carp, I think that's fine, nice and strong, but nice and thin still where you're going to get good presentation, everything's going to settle correctly. Just a nice all-round mainline choice. So just going to add that onto the rig strip, onto the RigMate, sorry, and secure it in place. Just like that. So that's the nice thing, you can get everything nice and secured, keep everything tight, doesn't move. So I'm just going to thread that onto the line. Now, just before I do that, one thing I always do is just cut the line with a pair of sharp scissors. So I've just got a nice clean end to, you know, thread all my silicone on and my float on and stuff like that. Now, touching on the silicone that I use, again, this float's often about fishing sort of through the water and laying it in, getting nice slow presentation so the fish are seeing it falling through. Now, it sounds very like it wouldn't make a big difference, this, but it's something that's really, really important, is that you've got the correct silicone. If you use a silicone that's really thick in wall and it's really, really sort of clumsy on the float, when you lay it in, it often holds up and your float doesn't get that correct natural presentation that you want, where it's going to follow your shot through the water. So it's really important to use a nice thin silicone like this. Now, that's the one that I'm going to be using today. You'll see it here, it's the micro silicone from Guru, the 0.3mm. Now, it's actually for your hair rigs and your hooks and stuff like that, but I think it makes a perfect silicone for, you know, your delicate floats like this, because it's nice and thin walled, but it's still nice and strong. So I'm going to cut 3 pieces of silicone. So I do 2 pieces that are sort of 5 or 6mm long, and then one that's sort of, you know, twice as long, 10 or 11mm, and that's just perfect. Now, the importance of, like I say, making sure you cut your line with a sharp pair of scissors is even this real thin silicone just goes onto the line nice and easy. No point struggling, just make sure, you know, make sure you cut it and you can get it on nice and easy. So I've got my 3 pieces of silicone on the line. I'm just going to thread them onto the float now. Now, again, just a small little tip here is something that I always do to help me when I'm plumbing up, is I put that top piece of silicone sort of 2 inches down from the top of the float, and when I plumb up, I actually look for that top piece of silicone and I plumb up, so, you know, you've got the body and just to the silicone of your float sticking out the water, and then, you know, you've got about 2 inches a line, sort of 2 inches over depth, and I just find that's perfect for, you know, a good starting point for a variety of baits, anything, maggots, worms, corn, pellets. I sort of tend to fish it all the same as a starting point, so just a good little tip that I think, you know, sometimes can be hard to be consistent with where you're plumbing up to, and just by having that silicone in the same place, just about 2 inches down, just makes everything nice and easy when you're plumbing up. So middle piece of silicone I just have halfway in between the other two pieces, and that bottom piece of silicone just overhangs a little bit just to stop any tangles. So that's the float secured in place. So I'm just going to peel a bit of extra line off, just so I've got plenty of line to attach it to the end pin. I'm just going to tie a loop in the end of the line. Now, I always use this Sensus Easy Loop tire. Just ties a really consistent knot, nice and strong, and it just makes it quite quick for me to tie the knot. You can use all sorts of different types of loop tires, or you can do it by hand, but I just find this to be the best. So I'm just going to form a loop, pull it nice and tight. Make sure you pull everything really tight here at home. I think that's really important. Just means that, you know, if it's going to break, it'll break nice and quick at home, and you can always tie a new loop rather than hook into a nice big fish on the bank and it slips at the loop is the last thing you need. So got a nice little loop. Now, this rig, like I say, it's just a nice versatile rig. So what I want is, I want some nice sort of droppers that are nice and sort of not too big where it's going to make the hook bait fall really, really quick. But I don't want tiny little droppers where it's a little bit too faffy and it's a little bit too slow falling, that if I'm catching a lot of fish, I can't just get on with it. So I just find number 10s are perfect for the droppers. So all the way from 4x12 up to 4x16, I do just use number 10 droppers. I just find that's the perfect dropper for this sort of style of rig. And then the bulk just depends on the size of the float. Often 9s on a 4x12 and then 8s on a 4x14 or 4x16. So this particular float takes 5 number 8s in a bulk, 2 number 10 droppers. So I'm just going to put the shot on the line. Now, before I do that, just something I find that helps me to be able to put them on nice and easily is I'll just mark the line up with a Sharpie marker, just so I can see it clearly on the line, exactly where the shot needs to go. And I just think it makes it nice and quick just to put them in position. So I've got all that marked up now. I've got my dropper, which is going to go on my loop, my middle dropper there, which is going to be a number 10, and a bulk of number 8s. So I'm just going to put the bulk on first. Now, I always put all my shot in the tub on the rig mate. These are Balabini shot. I've got 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s and 12s, and then I've got my little 13s trimmers in the 13s tub there. So it's all in front of you. You don't have to go looking for tubs of shot and have loads of different tubs spread out. It's just all nice and condensed on the rig mate. So I'm going to get my number 8s for my bulk. Now, like I say, this takes 5 number 8s, this 4x14. So I'm just going to place them on the line. People might ask why just do a bulk of number 8s and not say 9s and have a few more shot, or even 10s. And I just find that having a nice little condensed bulk just works nicer. It's just neater. You don't have to have as many shot on the line, which could potentially weaken the line more. I just find it works better with, you know, less, bigger shot. As long as you've got sort of 5 or 6 shot in the bulk, I find that's perfect. So just make sure I try and line everything up nice and neat. And I've just put all them shot on. As you can see, I'm using a pair of shot pliers. These are the Preston ones, but any sort of pliers, you can get them from sort of crafting shops as well. Just stops you, using your teeth. And I think that damages your line when you use your teeth. With these sort of shot pliers, everything goes on nice and evenly, and you don't get any marks on the line or anything like that. So put my bulk on, 5 number 8s, everything's on nice and neat. Now I've got my number 10s. So I'll put my middle dropper on while everything's attached to the rig mate like this. And then just to help me put my bottom dropper on near my loop, I find it quite difficult to put it on so close to the end pin like that. So what I do is I just take the pin off, and then it just allows me to put my other number 10 dropper on. And that is basically your rig complete. Bulk and 2 droppers. You've got a fairly quick fall off the bulk, so when there's a few fish they can get it down nice and quick. But you've just got 2 number 10s in the last part of your rig, which is just going to come in that little bit slower, catch a few fish sort of on the drop, or just let the fish see it as it's falling in. Perfect all round rig, and to be honest, it's the one that I use more than any other, so brilliant rig. Now, the only other thing you might need potentially is some trimming shot. You can do this at home if you've got your shotting tube with you and test it, but if not, you can just put them on the bank. Often the floats sit perfect with that amount of shot on anyway, but you know, if it is a little bit high, you can just pop a number 13 on the bank and just trim that down, just so it's how you want it. So other than that, that is the rig complete. So I'm just going to put it onto the winder, so I'll just get a winder. Now, this rig of 4x14 maggies, I might actually use in the winter for potentially even fishing up to sort of 7 or 8 foot deep when I'm fishing for silverfish and I want a fairly light rig. So I'm going to put plenty of turns on this. You know, so often in the winter you're fishing in quite deep water, so I'm just going to put sort of 16, 17 turns. Probably I might even go for 18 just to make sure I've got plenty of line. I don't like wasting line and doing too many turns round, but you want to make sure you have got plenty of line and you're not getting to the bank and it's too short. So I'll do 18 turns. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 18 turns. So a nice big loop in the line. Makes it nice and easy for me to attach to the top of the winder. Just make sure my float's nice and central on the winder. And that's me F1 winter depth rig. And like I say, don't just think that's a rig that you can only use for F1s. This rig is a rig that I'd use for all sorts of me bottom fishing, winter and summer, when I'm trying to get really good presentation. Bulk and 2 droppers, nice delicate float, and a nice all-round sort of mainline choice that you can use for a variety of fish. Brilliant rig that, and one you can't be without when you're fishing commercials.